Hey guys, so welcome back to another episode of the Sober Spartan podcast. This is the podcast where if you're looking to get sober or you've been struggling to get sober, stuff like that, I want to be able to share different things that could possibly help you that I've learned over my 10 years of sobriety. So, and today I'm going to do something a little bit different because today's Mother's Day, so I figured I might as well do something for Mother's Day. It's May 12th. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my background, a little bit how I grew up, about my mom, stuff like that, and a couple things that happened in my life that kind of shaped me into the man I am today. So my mom was a single mother for a long time. There was an issue with my father that was alcohol fueled, and he was kind of abusive, which obviously no one wants to stay in a situation like that. That's not a good situation for anyone. Like, he wasn't a bad person. My mom will even say that, but he did make bad decisions, and especially when he drank and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people run into that kind of issue because when you drink, you're definitely not the same person that you were. And I mean, just in my life, looking back when I was drinking, I was completely different than I am now. So we ended up leaving that situation because we were living together, stuff like that. And so we moved around a lot. We were living in Calgary, Alberta. Um, and yeah, we were just jumping from place to place to place. We were staying with some of my mom's other friends, stuff like that. And then before we moved here to British Columbia, we ended up, we were living in a hotel for quite a while. And then my mom's sister, she basically threatened my mom with calling child services if we didn't move to British Columbia to stay with my grandmother because she knew about the situation and stuff like that. And obviously my mom was pissed about that, but we ended up moving to British Columbia because of that. And we ended up staying with my grandmother. So it was me, my brother, my mom, and my grandma. We call her Nanny. She didn't like grandma. But and so we'd stay in a little small apartment, and we did that for a while. So I moved here probably when I was about 7 or 8. So starting grade 4, something like that. And so that's kind of how we moved here. And like growing up, money was always tight and stuff like that. We ended up moving into the same apartment, just uh, down the hall from my grandmother. And that was just a 1 bedroom, small apartment. We ended up getting an upgrade when we got to high school, and then we got a 2 bedroom apartment. One of the bedrooms had a master bedroom or a master bathroom, and so it was a bit bigger. We had a little more space. Me and my brother always shared a room when we were growing up. And then eventually, a little bit later in high school, my mom gave us the bigger room with the bathroom and stuff like that. So yeah, money was always tight, and like my mom would always go out of her way to make sure that me and my brother were taken care of. Even though money was tight, like she'd always like get us crazy gifts and stuff like that for Christmas. Like she would even like pretend that she was full for me and my brother to be able to eat more, right? And I at the time I didn't realize she was doing that, but like looking back, um, and then we actually had a conversation about it. And so that's just the type of things that she would do. Like she was always super caring. She always wanted to help other people, stuff like that. So that's kind of where I got my drive to help other people. I think that kind of came from my mom. And so I started drinking at like 13. I think lots of people do, grade 8, stuff like that. You're a teenager, you you want to go out and experiment and stuff like that. And I had some friends that wanted to go out drinking, all that kind of thing. So I ended up like in high school. I think most kids like they want to rebel and they don't want to follow rules, and you just want to do whatever the hell you want, right? And that's basically what I did. Like I started drinking, I started smoking pot, all that kind of thing. And then like um we lived in a small apartment, and so we had the master bedroom, so it was a little bit bigger. Like we had it set up like I had my bed over here, my brother had his bed there. We had a couch, and then like we had a big screen TV with like we could play games and shit. At the time it was like Nintendo 64 and PlayStation 2. um So we'd have friends over and we'd hang out in there, we'd smoke pot in there, all that kind of thing. And it like we ended up calling it Drew's Dungeon because we would have parties in there so often. It'd be so messed up. Like I'd have friends climbing in through my window, and like even sometimes when I wasn't there, and they'd go in there and just hang out and stuff like that, right? Like there was even a time where we were all partying in there, whatever, and then a friend had left his phone, and then another friend of mine, he took out a torch and was torching the phone like a fucking idiot, and the phone ended up exploding, and the battery was like spitting out all this smoke in this small little in this room in the apartment, right? So we like opened the window, smoke just pouring out the window. Anyways, the fire department ended up coming because of that, and this was like super early in the morning. My mom was sleeping, she didn't wake up, and I don't know how like she didn't wake up a lot of this time because we weren't really quiet or anything. But the fire department came and the cops and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a pretty messed up situation. But stuff like that was happening all the time. Like my brother ended up like not liking me having friends over all the time and partying in the room, so he ended up putting his bed. He had a small little bed into the walk-in closet, so he would be like away from everything. And so we ended up going in there when he was sleeping and just hotboxing it and getting him high. Well, and he's only a year younger than me, so at the time he was probably like 14. I was about 15 or something, 16, when all this was going on. And then so it just kept going like that until I was about 17 or so. And I came home super drunk. And again, I wasn't listening to my mom. She told me she didn't want anyone over, anything like that. But then I told two friends that they can come spend the night and whatever. So we came back and my mom was sitting at the kitchen table. And then I was like, oh yeah, okay, so these are my two friends. They're gonna sleep over. And she didn't want it. But I wasn't taking no for an answer. And I was drunk too, like out of my mind. Then eventually she just had enough, and she ended up strangling me a little bit, which I would have strangled myself too, if I was being an idiot for so long, because this was just an ongoing thing. When I was like a teenager in my problem, right? Because it was actually really bad, and I didn't at the time. I think most times you don't think a situation's as bad as it is, but I was drinking so much, like even at that age in high school, and just doing dumb shit on a regular basis. So she had enough. I ended up getting kicked out, and so that first night we left, and then there was this church that we used to smoke pot at, and we ended up climbing on the roof and sleeping on the roof for that night. And so from there, I ended up sleeping outside like a couple nights, whatever. And then I was like, okay, maybe I'll go back and get a sleeping bag, or like a sleeping bag, and then hopefully that she'll let me back, right? And she ended up not letting me back, which I don't blame her at all, because like I would have not put up with all the shit that I put her through. And at the moment, I was completely pissed off. Like I was playing the victim, um, and oh, woe is me, whatever, like being a little bitch about it. But the thing is, that's exactly what I needed at that point in my life, because I was just not doing the things I needed to be doing, and I had no respect, any of that shit, right? And I think looking back, like how young I was, um I like most people my age were the same type of thing. Like teenagers, you don't know fuck all. You haven't had life experience. Like me and my friends, like we would get drunk, and for fun we would do something called fence bowling. And so what that is you get drunk, whatever, and then you'd run at a fence and body check through it. And so we do dumb shit like that. Like now I couldn't even fathom damaging somebody else's property and not caring and thinking it was fun. Like that's like, even just thinking back to that absolutely disgusts me, right? But again, it's stuff that was kind of fueled by alcohol. And it's like I think back to all the times like we were in that little apartment, and like I had so many people there, like all the time. And like we'd be doing drugs in there and all that kind of shit. And it was just not a good scene. And like I put my mom through a lot of bullshit in those days. And so I ended up like when she kicked me out, before like I actually got to think about it and stuff like that, I was actually really resentful that she did that. I was like, why would she do this to me? Like all that kind of stuff. But I ended up figuring it out. I ended up couch hopping for a bit, and then eventually I got an apartment. I was still only 17, still going to high school, and then I had a job that I worked after that. But like it taught me a lot, because it's like you get thrown into these things, uh, these struggles, and that's when you learn the most. That's when you grow the most, right? So at that time, I still had a bit of drinking left in me, because I ended up getting sober when I was 23. So I had a lot of times drinking and stuff like this, and I got kicked out of apartment, got kicked out of basement suites, stuff like that, and I was doing a lot of hopping around because I was an idiot. I was actually surprised they actually decided that they wanted to rent to me my first apartment, because I was so young, right? And they even said, like, you're pretty young, like, we don't know, we've had bad experiences. But I guess, I convinced them. And sure enough, I messed that all up, because again, I was having parties there all the time. We had a local pub that was like just down the road. And so I'd be like, okay, everyone back to my place. And then we just crowd into my house. And then my landlord would be knocking, like, can you keep it down? Like, you have all these people here. And then I just tell them to fuck off. Just dumb shit like that, right? So um, I have a lot of respect for my mom and everything she did for me growing up. And then like even still now, she always tries to do everything she can. And so I think being a mother is probably one of the hardest jobs. And you see a lot of women these days say stuff like, "Oh, I'm just a stay-at-home mom," or something like that. But it's like, if you think about it, it's one of the most important jobs. Being able to raise a family, take care of the household, all that kind of stuff. Like, there's nothing. No one should feel any shame about that. Like, people should take a lot of pride in being able to do something like that, because it's probably the most important job, because we want to be raising the next generation of people to do good and be strong and be able to take care of themselves and other people, right? So yeah, I just wanted to do something for Mother's Day a little bit different, talk about my mom and how grateful I am for everything she's done, and just give a shout out to all the mothers out there that are waking up every day and fucking raising their kids and doing what they need to do, figuring shit out, right? So that was this episode. I think I'll wrap it up at that. But happy Mother's Day to everyone, and I hope you have a good day.